What's up, guys? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to talk about why tomorrow is going to be a very important day for Tesla in the markets as we have the FOMC minutes coming out. So I'll talk about when that's coming out, how this could affect Tesla. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, and the offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, as far as Tesla's going, we have a left shoulder here, a head, and then a right shoulder. This may lead to more volatility, so get ready for all of this. I also want to note that we have resistance at 362 to watch for us. If you break this, I'm looking for a bigger move up. Now, if we lose 348, we're going to be dipping back down. Otherwise, that's the range of Tesla for the last couple of days. So the question is, what data and news is coming out that's going to be affecting Tesla? Let's talk about that first, and then I'll break down the charts in just a couple of minutes. So the first piece of news that's quite significant is the fact that the hedge fund giant Bridgewater Associates has come out, and they're placing a very, very big bet on Tesla. They've added about $62 million worth of Tesla shares over the last couple of months. In the fourth quarter alone, they added that much. And they also have been continuing to see some very, very strong looking sentiments towards Tesla. Looking at their latest 13F filing reports, they're very, very optimistic about what's happening so far, and they believe that there's going to be a lot of growth because of robotics and AI. They're also very, very optimistic about Elon Musk's leadership abilities. So they mentioned that despite the fact that Elon Musk has his hands in so many different things, from Doge to all these companies, he's still a very, very awesome CEO, and they gave him a lot of praise. So that's some good news, at least thus far. And with the next filing report coming out soon, we'll see to what extent they're continuing to buy up these shares. Now, for the long term, I think this makes a lot of sense because Bridgewater is going to continue to hold up Tesla stock for many, many years, if not decades to come. For the long term, that's what they're in for. And they're big investors. If anything, they're looking at this from a more investor based perspective. So, once again, they're looking at this for the long term. It's very, very awesome news. As far as Tesla goes involving India, there's been a lot of talk about Tesla potentially expanding to India. Let me just say that right now, there's no true confirmation that Tesla's building like a gigafactory there yet. But I want to say that what is good is the fact that Elon Musk met with the Prime Minister Modi, and we're seeing about 13 new job positions that are being posted on Tesla's LinkedIn for Mumbai. That's a very important region in India. And this is raising some hopes amongst different investors. So that's a good piece of news, at least thus far. I think that as time goes on, what's going to be affecting this is going to be tariffs and what we see with taxes and factors like that. So we'll see how that goes for them, at least moving forward. There was a big piece of news that came out last year about how if firms could commit about $500 million in investments into India and they begin domestic manufacturing there within 3 years, they could import up to 8,000 EVs each year at a 15% tax rate. That was big news that came out, at least so far. So hopefully we see some new developments in terms of tariffs and such. And then that could also incentivize Tesla to continue to expand over there. So we'll see about that. Elon Musk has spoken very highly about India. He always and oftentimes does that, especially because of the great, amount of engineers and very, very good innovation that comes from that area. So I want to make that very clear. This is a very, very big deal that could be made, especially as Tesla expands to more areas. But for the short term, Tesla's just posting more job listings, and there's no sign that we're truly building like a massive gigafactory yet. So we'll see how that goes. Right now, it's just a very, very good sign that Musk is meeting up with Modi. They have a good relationship so far, so that's good for Tesla, at least for now. With that being said, what do I see for the share price? So just as a reminder, we have this inverse head and shoulders, and we're trying to rebound right here. Now, whether or not we get a big rebound is going to depend on a lot of different factors, especially the data for tomorrow. That's why I want to talk about that. And with SPY, my prediction was that we would see like a dip and bounce. Unfortunately, I was half right because what happened was we actually gapped up first. We pumped in the pre-market and then we dumped and bounced. But overall, the market is still looking very, very optimistic, favoring those bulls. So even Tesla is technically favoring bulls right now as it's holding its key support and has a bullish structure. But we'll see how this goes depending on some big pieces of news. Now, a couple more things. There's been a lot of talk about Donald Trump today in the headlines. They're saying that Donald Trump will likely impose tariffs on cars, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals at a rate of around like 25%. That hasn't been confirmed, though. That's not confirmed yet. There could be more announcements coming as soon as April 2nd or beforehand. So just be prepared, guys. But so far, despite this news, the market remains very, very elevated. It's doing a great job at holding up, and it's not really affecting it too much. Now, tomorrow is going to be Wednesday. February 19th, 2025, we do have something very big coming out. In the morning, we just have minor mortgage data, nothing too crazy. Some bond auctions come out around 11:30 and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's all very, very minor data. But then at 2 p.m., this is when it gets very serious. And I would recommend just mainly focusing on this. Much of the data is just noise, and this is the main thing. At 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, we have the FOMC minutes, and this may cause some high volatility for Tesla, SPY, ES, and the others. So, what is so important about the FOMC minutes? Let's talk about this. Basically, it is not FOMC, it is the FOMC minutes. There's a very, very important distinction that can be made. The FOMC minutes is simply similar to FOMC, except it's going to be a paper report about what the Fed is thinking, what their views are on inflation and interest rates. And it's going to give us a lot of insights about what their targets are. What is the Fed basically thinking? Well, Jerome Powell was in front of Congress last week. He was giving his testimonies in front of both the House and the Senate, and he maintained a very, very dovish stance. He kept saying that although inflation is elevated, they need to see it come down more for them to cut more, but it's still on track to hit their target goals. He's continuing to say there's a lot of progress being made. He said that the economy is still very, very strong and the labor market remains very resilient. And he continued to insist that the economy is doing fine. We're on track for a soft landing. And that's what helped the market pump. So tomorrow, if the report continues to hold that narrative that there's a soft landing, the economy is doing well, we're on track with inflationary numbers, the market could pump even more once this data comes out. But if it's the opposite, if it's the opposite of what Jerome Powell said, if it's the exact opposite, and if they give us something very, very different, if the Fed ends up saying that, hey, inflation is still going up, we have to be very cautious, we might not cut much this year and blah, 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 the same things they typically say that's more like hawkish. If the Fed's more hawkish and they are very, very careful with interest rates and they don't really say as much when it comes to progress and such, that could cause the market to get a rug pull. So it could go either way depending on what happens at 2 p.m. So please keep that in mind. It depends on what the Fed ends up announcing. Also know that we also have in about a month from now, the next FOMC meeting. We're expecting a 97.5% chance the Fed keeps rates the same. That's what the expectation is. Besides that, we have Etsy and Wix announcing earnings on Wednesday, not to mention Carvana. On Thursday, we have Alibaba and Walmart, and then Friday is going to be very, very minor, so we'll see how this goes. So keep that in mind. Last thing is that we have the fear and greed index currently at neutral, stuck in the middle. Momentum is at neutral, not really changing too much. The put to call option ratio is at greed. This is typically when the market's going to form a top soon. There's no sign yet that we're like ready though. And the VIX remains neutral as we're waiting for a big move. So what is my view of the markets? Honestly, guys, the market's going to do its thing. It's going to continue to shuffle, maybe even push higher. But then once this data comes out, the FOMC minutes, I'm expecting a very, very big move depending on the tonality of the Fed. So please keep that in mind tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So what do I think is going to happen tomorrow? Here's a very, very simple way of looking at Tesla. It's range bound, right? Look at the last couple of days. It's been going back and forth for the last 3 days in this range. If we're bullish, okay, let's just ignore the data. If we continue to pump and we break 362, if we get good news, we're looking for 370 plus as our target. We could go to 370, 368 to 370 or above if we break 362. If we don't break 362 and we end up losing 348, there's going to be a risk of Tesla declining to about the low 340s, very close to 340 flats or below. Why is 362 so important? This is where we had this key resistance in the past. The market does not forget resistances and supports, so keep that in mind. What's very likely to happen is this, though. Tesla is technically just consolidating its range bound. It's stuck in the middle, but it is looking like it might try to push for 362 tomorrow morning, and then we'll see if it drops around a bit, which is very, very probable. And then when the Fed announces their decision, what they think about interest rates, and they give us the FOMC minutes, Tesla either launches to 370 or it gets a big rug pull. Could go either way. For now, I do anticipate a small push to 362 or a little bit above that. Just to start things off, we do look a somewhat more bullish thanks to the inverse head and shoulders and because we're technically making a higher low, unless we lose 348. So what's good is that we're making higher highs and higher lows, and the daily time frame remains a little bit more decent. We're actually technically holding up quite well. Keep in mind, we do have this gap below that could get filled later on, but for now, we remain elevated. So tomorrow, it's very simple. My prediction is Tesla is technically making higher lows, and there's a good chance we try to touch 362. Now, could we break out higher? Yes, but this is going to depend on the FOMC minutes. If we don't, we could reject, but this is what my view is: a small push and consolidation, then the minutes either cause a big pump or a rejection, so it could go either way, so we'll see how it ends up going. For other factors out there, we have SPY. SPY is looking a bit more bullish. Let me explain exactly why this is. So what's good about SPY is, excuse me, the symmetry right here. If you look at the fact that we had this inverse head and shoulders like structure, and we're just consistently making higher lows. So we had a low here, came up, made a higher low, came up, and we're continuing to break out very well. When you look at our charts, check this out, guys. On the 4-hour, we have this resistance. So we have resistance, rejection, 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 and we ended up breaking past this after Donald Trump announced his tariffs, which is quite bullish. And then today, notice that SPY ended up doing this. We essentially dipped and then bounced. Now we're trying to rally back up to all-time highs. So we made a new all-time high. We dumped 4 points. Then we bounced like there was no tomorrow. So you guys could see the buyers are still defending. So here are the levels on SPY, and here's what I think is going to happen. If SPY loses 608 tomorrow, we turn bearish. We're looking for 605 or below. If we break 612.5, we're looking for a bigger push towards like the 615 to 616 area. Please keep those levels in mind. My prediction is that SPY is forming a wick here, so we're going to be looking for a push tomorrow to that 612.5 area, maybe a little bit higher. It might go a little bit higher tomorrow morning, and then the minutes, when the Fed announces what they're saying from the report for the economy at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when the Fed makes the announcement, this either launches to 615 or it gets a big rug pull back down to 608 or below. As of right now, the chart favors upside, so it's favoring the bullish move, but we'll see just to be safe, right? I'm not really a fortune teller. I can't promise what the Fed will announce, but technically, we do look a bit more bullish. For the QQQ, we look bullish because when you zoom out, the same thing is going on. We have a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. If we manage to break this resistance around the 540 area, 541, we're looking for 542.5, then 545. If we reject and lose 538, we're looking for 535 as our next support. Looking at the trend, we're making higher highs and higher lows, and we're continuing to break out very, very well. So I think that this looks a bit more bullish. We formed a wick down below. The wick took us to a touch of like 535 and we bounced. So this has an imbalance to fill, so I think we're looking bullish. Overall, I think there's a good chance we push for 541 or even above that for much higher levels like 542.5. We are favoring a retest of the all-time high, but whether we break out even higher for 545 or get a rug pull is going to depend on the FOMC minutes. I'm hoping we continue to break out as long as we break the all-time high. 545 is on the table, and we do favor upside, but just to be safe, we'll see what happens with this report, so just keep that in mind. The Russell 2000 looks bullish. Why does it look bullish? Because there's an inverse head and shoulders here that looks very, very nice, especially because of the fact that there's an imbalance, which is acting as a magnet. So these imbalances do love to get filled, and they love to like create more volatility. So in this case, there's a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. As long as we don't lose 226, we could touch it, then bounce. We're looking for an attempt for 229. Looks bullish. Inverse head and shoulders looks quite good so far, so I think we're doing a great job. For ES, we look bullish. For other factors out there, I just want to make this very clear that we're looking bullish because of the fact that the full measured move from a possible inverse head and shoulders, I know it's a little hard to see. There's like a left shoulder here, a head, and then a right shoulder. That would take us up to about 61, 68, number one. Number two, we're breaking out of this structure. So if you look at the structure, we had this first leg up, right? Then we had another structure. This was our flag that was forming. We broke out of it, so that's typically bullish. We need to get back in this flag to turn bearish. We're not even close to it, so this is still favoring that it wants to go up to all-time highs. Notice that SPY and the QQQ are breaking all-time highs, but our futures such as ES and NQ are not. We're still below them. So this suggests to me that the futures will try to push for all-time highs, which could drag SPY and the QQQ even higher. With that being said, I think what's going to likely happen is this. Notice how we dipped today and we bounced. This is going to be going for 61, 68 tomorrow. Could we get a rug pull if the FOMC minutes are not the best, if the Fed is like hawkish? Yes, we could be tipping to below 6,100, or we could be breaking past this, start pushing for closer to 6,200. Could go either way, but we're favoring upside for now. We'll see what happens with the FOMC minutes, but we look a bit more bullish. NQ is looking bullish because of the same setup. There's an inverse head and shoulders like pattern as well. left shoulder, head, and then right shoulder. The full measured move is about 22,400 plus. If we end up losing 22,162, we're looking for 22,000 flats. I think that right now we are favoring upside. Might dip a bit here before it tries to continue to uptrend for 22,400, but overall it looks bullish. As long as you don't lose 22,000 flat, we favor upside. This looks pretty good. Could we dip a bit? It depends on the FOMC minutes, but I just want to say technically this looks bullish. Looks like it wants to go up to 22,400. For Bitcoin, we have 95,961 as resistance and 96,568. We're pushing so far, so I think we favor upside a little bit more. This may depend on the minutes, so we'll see how it goes. For Nvidia, we dipped a little bit. I just want to say that Nvidia did push as we predicted to about 144, came just short of my target, but still it did a great job at pumping. We did call this move. So I wouldn't be surprised if we dip just a bit to like 135 before it tries to bounce again. I still think there's more upside potential for this, especially after Morgan Stanley gave them a buy rating. So there might be a small dip before it tries to bounce. That's looking pretty good, at least thus far. Once again, for Tesla, we're looking a little bit more bullish. We do favor upside thanks to the inverse head and shoulders, unless we end up losing 348, so it could go either way. I do want to see a little push tomorrow morning. We'll see if we push thanks to the FOMC minutes. So we'll see to be safe, but I do think that we might be touching 362 at the very least, and we'll see if we break out higher. Overall, it's just consolidating. Apple looks a bit more bullish, forming a double bottom here. If we end up losing 240, we're looking for a dip back down to 236. As long as we're above 242, we're favoring 248. So I favor a move like this to about 248, and we'll see if we reject or not, depending on the resistance, but we were looking a bit more bullish. For Netflix, we are looking for 1,035 as the main level. If that fails us, we have 1,012. If this holds, we're looking for a bounce. With the wicks forming, I think we could be touching 1,015. We'll see if we reject here because we have a big red bar. That could be leading to a little bit of a reversal right here, so please be very, very careful with Netflix. For other tickers such as MicroStrategy, we look a bit more bullish because of this inverse head and shoulders, like a left shoulder, head, and then a right shoulder. If we break 337.5, we're looking for an attempt for 344. If we lose 331, we dip back down. I think that this is at least technically favoring a dip and a bounce all the way into like the 340s, just like that. For Celsius, we're looking bullish. As long as we don't end up losing 23.02, we are continuing to look bullish. And we could be looking for essentially 24.5 as our target. So I think we're doing a great job so far. I want to mention that 24.63 to 24.5 is a nice range, and that we could continue this uptrend back up towards 24.63. For Supermicro, we look a bit more bullish right here. We're continuing to make higher highs and higher lows. I did predict it's going to be hitting 15. If that breaks, we're looking for 55. We're even higher than that, so it's going higher than what I predicted. So far, when you zoom out, it's looking like it's trying to go back up towards these highs here. We have another liquidity zone around 64.5. So at this rate, I think 60 to 64.5 could be coming. Looks very strong so far, so there's no sign of weakness. Unless we lose 50, we are still favoring upside. Palantir, as long as we don't end up losing 122 and 117, we're favoring 126 and 128. So I think there's a good chance we continue to uptrend. I think this may be pushing for the much higher 120s to get up to about 130. So it looks bullish. Rivian is breaking out right here, making a very, very nice move to the upside. Let me just call out that we have an inverse head and shoulders. There's a left shoulder here, a head, and then a right shoulder. As long as we don't lose 14, we are continuing to favor a push for the 15s. Looks bullish so far with the inverse head and shoulders setup. For now, we look bullish, but don't forget that we have earnings right over here on Thursday. So we'll see what that does for Rivian. But for now, the share price is looking very, very promising, very, very strong. For SoFi, we look bullish. We have basically 17.25 to about 18 is our target. As long as we don't end up losing 16.5, I think we favor the 17.25 to 18 area. For AMD, we're at a very, very good level on AMD. So look at this big white line that's kind of like our resistance right here. We rejected many, many times. We're testing it as soon as tomorrow. Will we break 114 to start pumping for this imbalance fill and start going up for the 120s? Or do we reject and come back down? If we reject and end up losing 112.68, we dump. If we break 116, we're bullish and we're going to 120. So I think that it could go either way. It's at resistance. I'm going to be very patient on this one. So be careful. There's a wedge forming, but they don't always pan out if you have imbalances. So it's really just 50-50 right now. We have to wait and see if we break resistance. So far, it's looking somewhat promising. ARM has supported 155. We bounced. We're looking for essentially 164. Looks pretty promising. Coin might try to bounce. We dumped really hard. We're forming a slight bullish divergence. I did predict it would touch like 260, before it tries to bounce. Could be making a move back up to 272. Amazon has got to hold 225. If it does not hold that, it dumps even lower to 223. As long as we hold 225, we're looking for an attempt for 229. For Meta, we're in a range between 723 and 708. We're stuck in the middle. We might be dipping to about 708, so be very, very careful. And we'll see if we bounce. Might be a little bit of a dip, so be very, very careful. Microsoft is in the middle, forming some wicks here. If we break past 410, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to about 412. If we end up losing 408, we could be dipping back down. So I do favor the 412 area as the most likely possibility. For Google, we're doing a great job. We're trying to base around 183. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt for essentially 190. So just keep that in mind. That's very, very probable, at least for now. So I think we're doing a good job. Could be looking for an attempt for 188. For GameStop, we have this big wick forming here. It might dip closer to like 26 before it tries to bounce. AMC is looking bullish. If we try to hold above 3.7, we're looking for an attempt for the high threes. If we end up losing 3.5, we're looking for a dip. I think this is favoring upside a bit more. DJT is on a bit of a downtrend. We're going to be watching to see if this could hold support right over here. It might be dipping to about the low 28s before it tries to bounce. The VIX is in the middle. We're looking for a move back down towards on the 4 hour to where this gap fill is. So I do presume it's going to be dipping to fill this gap. So please be very, very careful. That could favor upside, at least for the markets for now. And then the 10-year, this is in the middle. It has like this large head and shoulders, but it could go either way. And the dollar is also trying to push a bit. We'll have to see if this rejects or not. It's at resistance around 107. So be careful, guys. Right now, these indicators suggest the market's a bit more bullish, unless we get a big breakout on the dollars. Just keep that in mind. For now, SPY is looking bullish, and this could really help Tesla as long as there's no bad news. I anticipate a test of 362 tomorrow morning, but then we might just continue to consolidate. And whether we get a big break or not in this range is going to depend a lot on the FOMC minutes, most likely. So we'll see what this gives us. Get ready for the Fed to give us some big announcements during their report. Once again, Jerome Powell's not giving a speech. It's not your typical FOMC meeting. It is simply just a report on paper. So get ready for that. That's going to give us insights from what these other Fed officials are saying, and we'll get ready for a big move. Thank you all so much for listening. For now, the bulls have a bigger edge in the markets at the time I'm speaking, so we'll see how it goes. Thank you for listening. Have a good one. I'll be back tomorrow before market open for another update. Until then, I just wish you all the best, and I'll be back very, very soon. Thank you for listening, and peace out.